everyone for joining us for our bi-monthly webinar series here in February of 2025. We really appreciate the large audience we're starting to gather for these bi-monthly presentations. Please make sure you check out the very popular upcoming topics we have. You can see them at ETRAGE.com under the Events tab. A few housekeeping items as we get started. Everyone that is an attendee is muted. If you have questions, we really want to hear them. You should be able to see a Q&A tab in the upper left-hand corner of the interface. Please submit your questions there. We will cover all the questions we can at the end of the presentation. Anything we do not have time to answer today, or if you happen to stump us, we will reach out and follow up with you as soon as we are able. There will be a recording of this presentation available, usually within 24 hours. Please do reach out if you'd like to see that recording and you have not heard from us. A short agenda today. My coworker will be covering the considerations you should have in mind from both the system side and the business side of a new Windchill deployment, configuration, and setup. You're in really great hands today. Robert Surahan, my coworker of roughly 10 years, has nearly 3 decades of experience with PTC products, about 20 of those years specific to focusing on Windchill. The vast array of experience in many types of Windchill configurations. A little bit about ETRAGE. We have been in business for more than 20 years. We're a global company. Our focus is on PLM adoption. That often involves us gathering a great deal of customer and end user and stakeholder feedback to make sure all the processes that can and should be automated are automated in the most simplistic and useful way possible. A bit about our focus on PLM adoption. We realize that your investment in PLM is core to a customer's plans around their digital thread. A lot of companies will be several years into that investment and are not seeing all the return they want. ETRAGE excels at helping customers get all the benefits they want and need from those PLM investments they have already made. That can take several forms. It can be training. It can be taking customer feedback and making sure end users receive just the user interface that they need to be successful. But at any rate, PLM adoption is our goal. A few notes about our suite of solutions. We have a number of our own applications meant to complement Windchill and make, again, PLM adoption happen across the company in all departments. Core to our products are the viewer, the publisher for Windchill. But today we'll be focusing more on Windchill itself. So that column on the right, we provide a number of Windchill services. Today, the Windchill implementation, how that can be set up. We won't so much get into customizations, but what do you do with Windchill up until that threshold of customization? With that, I'll hand things over to my coworker, Robert Surahan. He'll take over the screen sharing, and I'll reappear towards the end to help lead the Q&A.
Hello, everyone. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I believe we can.
Okay. Thanks, everyone, for taking the time. I have put together this presentation based on the Windchill 12.1 installation out of the box. I didn't really do anything to it. I just installed it and went through the system, which I broken down the presentation to 2 categories: the system setup out of the box and the business. Of course, the business is more extensive than the system one. But nevertheless, there are some items on the system side that you need to be aware of if you decide to use Windchill out of the box. Please don't attempt any of these things I'm about to show you on a production environment. Like if you wanted to explore some of the topics or details that I've put in this presentation, try to do that on a development environment rather than a production. Starting with the system setup. So the out-of-the-box setup, if you install Windchill 12.1, the first thing we usually look for is where is potentially the content data will be stored. And out of the box, the system is set up to use a Vault folders, 2 of them, that are created under the Windchill application installation folder on your operating system folder structure. So be aware of that. Typically, you want to change that right away. The other thing that you need to be aware is that there's 2 vaults. There's Cache Vault and there's Master Vault. So by default, out of the box, all content, when users check in their documents, CAD document, anything that has a physical content file, it is set up to go to the Cache Vault. And there's a synchronized a thread that takes place every 3 hours. And potentially all it does, it goes into the cache folder and it moves them into the folder next to it, which is the what we call the system folder or the master folder. I mean, this setup is in place when you have replica sites and when you have a deployment of Windchill overseas and you want to improve performance. It's really not necessary when you have your server located on premise, or you don't have this physical distance between you know, your company departments. So be aware of this. And again, the location of it, it's under the Windchill install. That not recommended at all. That need to be moved into somewhere where it's visible and can be backed up without any issues. All right, let's go to the next one. The other thing is when you install Windchill out of the box, there's no integration with Active Directory. Windchill runs on a third-party LDAP. It's no longer included as of 12.1.2 or 12.2, I believe. It's no longer included as part of the PSI, the PTC solution installer, and you have to go download it separately, install it. So be aware of that. However, there's nothing alarming here. I mean, you could start using the local LDAP, and potentially when you're ready to integrate with AD, there are well-documented, well-proven processes to actually map users from local LDAP to AD. And you don't lose anything, history or anything like that. Everything stays intact. So that's definitely no problem. The other things that you don't get when you install Windchill out of the box, there is no outgoing SMT server, so emailing will not work. You don't get automatic CAD publishing configuration. There will be no CAD workers. So when you install it, when you check in your CAD files, you're not going to see viewables. The out of the box preferences, in my opinion, don't meet a real production environment standards. So there's a lot of preferences that are left either not enabled or not set. And in my opinion, some of these are critical to actually having a production environment run smoothly. When you install Windchill, all services pertaining to the solution, for the exception of the database, run manually. So basically, if you log off of that user on the server, everything dies. So you have to keep that user logged in. But of course, I mean, as implementers, we turn these services into system services, so they run automatically in case of a reboot or anything of that nature. HTTPS is not enabled. Secure protocols are not enabled. And the last item, when you freshly install Windchill, you get one user, which is the site admin. The site admin is not automatically an org admin. That's a minor issue, but again, you need to be aware of it. That's as far as the system side. Now we'll just talk about the business configuration, starting with the object types. You know, it's an object-oriented environment. Everything in Windchill is referred to as an object, and then we use object type, and then it's really a combination of objects that manage other objects. And the system out of the box provides all configuration necessary to create any type of object potentially that you can create in Windchill. So it's not like that you install it and you have to, in case you want to create something that's uncommon, for example, like a package or any of the functionality that typically are hidden. No, it is actually a full solution ready for you to use. All objects that potentially the end user can create are active, are enabled, they are configured. The configuration comes automatically from the site. So they're driven down to the organization, and the organization potentially will have lower level products and libraries, and those would inherit all that configuration that's coming from the site. Typically not something that we like as implementers. We don't like to use anything from the site for one reason only. Those templates and those configuration change from one release of Windchill to another. And you have no idea how many times I've visited customers where I would do an upgrade and they would launch it, and they'll come to me and they'll say, hey, my process stopped working. This doesn't look familiar. And then I would have to dig deeper into their configuration and identify that they actually used the out-of-the-box process or updated the out-of-the-box, and what was the upgrade, it overwritten it, and then now it's back to the default. So we try to stay away from making any modification to the site, or even further, we don't even use site configuration. We make copies of it down to the lower level, and then we either use it as is or make changes to it. So the solution is ready is configured to use any CAD application. And again, the other downside that it uses a parent, which is an EPM document. Again, not something that we prefer. I think because then you're restricting your environment. Potentially, if you want to manage multiple CAD applications data, and some application might require separate additional attributes. Well, if you drive everything from the parent, then that's going to apply for all applications. So typically, we'd like to create what we call subtypes and manage them that way. WT parts configuration, same thing, coming from the site. It's out of the box functional. You get two types out of the box, electrical and part. Electrical is a subtype of the part, strictly therefore electrical parts. And of course, you get the part which is the parent. And that's what you get when you create your CAD or a standalone part and make association. You get that part, which is the parent. Not recommended, again, for the reasons I talked about previously. On the other hand, when you try to create a document, you get a long list of these documents. I'm not sure you get them all because I installed Project Link. It might be you only get the document and the reference document, and the rest of it is not there. But if you install Project Link, then it creates all these subtypes for you. The document is the parent, and then a reference document is and the rest actually are all subtypes. Again, I mean, that's generic document. Typically, customers would like to specify specific document types with titles that users would like to use. Moving on to context creator. So the out-of-the-box setup is nobody can create. So when you install Windchill with just the WC admin, nobody can actually create lower level context. The lower level contexts are really the area where end user interact with. If you're not an org admin or site admin and you log into Windchill and there are no lower level context, products and libraries mainly, then you have, I mean, there's not much you could do in Windchill. There's nothing you could do really, because then you can't create anything, you can't store anything. So the first thing you need to do is make sure that an org admin has been assigned. Once the org admin has been assigned, that particular user becomes automatically creator to those lower levels. And at that point, you want to log in as that person and or that user and create those lower level context. Do not take the WC admin and associate that WC admin with an org. Not a good idea. Leave the site admin out of the box, not associate it with an org, because if you do, you can't unlink him anymore from that organization. What that does, it creates a little bit of a headache down the road when you get the opportunity to actually, or when you're tasked to actually create additional organizations and manage data separately in that additional org. So the WC admin should be left as site admin, should not be a member of any org, and you should create a new organization or a new user and make that user the org admin. Okay, deeper, now that we created product, or in the process of creating a product, what do you get out of the box? So when you click the new product, you would get the ability to use the out-of-the-box general product or product design. Please don't pay attention to the npm link. That's because I had npm link installed, so these things showed up. But generally, if you install just Windchill PDM link, you're going to get general product, product design. For product templates, for library, you get document, general, and part library. Be aware that the document library and the part library are disabled by default. So literally, when you create a library, you're just going to get the general one. Be aware that the same issue, if you use these as is, or you make changes to them, the next time you do an upgrade, and believe me, I've seen this many times, PTC constantly update these things. They update internal processes, they update templates. So the minute you do an upgrade, you're going to see a new iteration, and it's going to override, not override, but it's going to take precedence over what you had modified at the site level. Again, do not do anything at the site. Leave those alone. Unfortunately, the out-of-the-box configuration is set up like that. Both templates in the product and libraries, they all inherit everything from this site, as I mentioned earlier, including object initialization rules. So there's no object initialization rules written internally to them. I think that's, I made a mistake here for one of them, the general product, but the product design does have internal OIRs. We'll see that later on. Starting with a general product, this is what you get when you create a general product. And I'm focused on the team. So now we have a context product called out-of-the-box general product, and there's a team to it. The only unique member or unique role here is called members, which is a generic role that you could place people in there to give them, to allow them access to that particular context. Every other role is dedicated to the out-of-the-box processes, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And those out-of-the-box processes will include promotion request, problem reports, change request, change notice, package deliveries, and project collaboration if you have Project Link installed. Now we're drilling down to the objects. How is the system initially identifies or assigns identity to these objects? Starting with CAD documents, which is very common. WT parts, if you want to use that functionality, highly recommend it. And of course, the generic document type. So you'd see at the lower level, they're automatically assigned a 10-digit auto-generated number, and that number changes, and Windchill will make sure that the new number is assigned, so there's no conflict. That number has to be unique per that type. So if you see a CAD document with number 001, and you see a part with 001, and you see a document 001, that's acceptable because the uniqueness is per the object type, not necessarily as a sort of overall file. Again, everything is object oriented in the system, and we don't treat it as a file. Promotion request and the change management object are all 5 digits, auto-generated. The out-of-the-box for the general product, CAD documents, parts, and document use the basic lifecycle. We're going to dig deep into that one. and the out-of-the-box provision is set to alpha and starts at A. So that's what you get directly out of the box. Let's talk a little bit about the basic lifecycle and the policies surrounding it. The layout of the basic lifecycle is very simple. It's these three states, and they start with the in-work state, release, and cancel. So it's very simple. And let's see. I missed a state here. One sec. My apologies. 1 second. Okay, I wanted to start here with the in-work. You guys still see my screen? I hope so. Okay.
Yes, we do.
Thank you. The in-work state. So this is mandated. Every object which we already listed, parts document, CAD documents and regular documents, they have to go into that state. There has to be a record of that in-work state for all these objects. And here are the policies. Team members meaning anybody that is assigned, except for the exception of guest. So if you put, even if you put a new role to that team or put somebody as a member, these policies apply to that particular user or a group of users. Okay, and you can see, I mean, the obvious alarming permission is the delete, right? So the ability then you can go create and modify and so on. Some of this stuff is also like little confusing. Like some of it has change management transitions, but not necessarily set up to take on change management. It is not suitable for as a production environment. It's meant to just get you started on learning how Windchill really manages files, but you're going to quickly realize that, yeah, this is going to create a lot of discrepancies internally. So let me go to the released one. In the released one, you would notice that everybody has the ability to revise back to in-work. And we didn't talk about promotions, but you saw there's promotions from in-work to released. Let me go back, just identify. And you can promote to released or canceled. And if we go to released, you see it can revise, and anybody can do this. It's not restricted. You could be an engineer, you could be a document, a marketing. It doesn't matter. Those policies apply to you because they have been written for one role and one role only, which is the team members. And that means everybody but guest. That's what that means. And here's the cancel. And again, there's change management from cancel to release, which doesn't make sense at all. But you could revise to in-work. So what potentially that means, if I have a change object on the cancel, I have to revise it back to in-work, which is fine. But why would you have an automatic transition from cancel directly to release? That doesn't make sense. But that's what the setup looks like. All right, so that's the basic lifecycle. Now we're going to talk about the other template that you get out of the box, which is the product design. That one is a little bit more sophisticated, and from the start you get a team more oriented toward the production environment, where you don't see just members. You see terminology that might be utilized, in a company, like designer, engineer, marketing, procurement, stuff, manufacturing engineer, designer, team leader, things that might be taken advantage of, that might be reflective of some job title that a company uses. And here's the list. There's quality engineer, there's procurement, as I mentioned. So And as we move forward, you're going to see they've taken it a step further. So in contrast to the template that we used previously, which is a generic one, the general one, they were very sloppy. They just created policies for team members that applied to anybody. For the product design, they actually done specific policies. But before we talk about that, they also included OIRs, object initialization rules, that when you use that template, they come embedded in that particular product. So now for promotion request, part, EPM, document, and regular document, you're no longer utilizing the OIR from the site. Now it is restricted to that environment, which means if I make changes to it, I can. And if we do upgrades, whatever the upgrades does to the top level, none of this will get affected. That's really the idea. As far as the management goes, yeah, we're still IDing number as 10 digits and 5 digits for promotion and change objects. The life cycle is, however, different. So instead of basic now, for CAD document, you're using one-phase development. For WT parts, using two-phase development. And for document, you're using one phase. Now, what's bewildering is I don't know why a CAD document uses a one phase and WT part uses two phase. That did not make sense to me. Typically, when I implement Windchill, the life cycle that complements the maturity stages of your CAD and drawings and assemblies is usually exactly the same as WT parts, because CAD usually will own WT part. So when you want to create WT part, you say, this WT part represent the CAD. So why wouldn't it have the same life cycles? I'm not sure what was I don't know what was the overall goal of this. Revision-wise, another bewildering thing, and you need to be aware of, in the OIRs, it's set up to use state-based, okay? And in the all three of them, actually, well, the one phase and the two phase, they're all set up to use state-based. If you're not familiar what state-based is, a state-based is have two schemes. The idea is that you identify a phase in your life cycle, which we'll see in a second here, where you say, as long as I am in that phase, you could call it conceptual prototyping if you want. Anytime I revise, I would like the revision to be numeric. And as I proceed to move outside that phase, I want to switch to alpha. And we typically refer to the other phase as mass production or change or final release or release, whatever terminology you want to call it, we can talk about it. The one thing is that transition. The transition to go from numeric to alpha based on your life cycle phase. And if you see down here, this is the actual one phase. And if you notice on the bottom, the way it's set up is phase one is design prototype. Phase two is released obsolescence. And once I transition to phase two, the transitions, the life cycle setup will not allow you to go backward. But in this case, it does for at least phase one. And so, yeah, they tried to utilize some of the recommended functionality, but I don't think they did a good job laying it out. That's my opinion. The other thing that, so the policies, when it comes to policies, they have written actually policies for each one of these roles, as you see in the table above, and for every state. And yeah, I mean, they did that. So if you need to do some cleanup, as always, and they were very loose. I mean, they gave everybody same policies. I don't understand. You know, why would marketing have to have the ability to revise? It doesn't make any sense. I mean, yeah, for document maybe, but not for CAD and WT part. So again, it just, I don't know, not a lot of thought was put into it, in my humble opinion. Moving on to the prototype. So you're in prototype and you revise in prototype. I don't understand that. Why would that be the case? Okay, so in prototype did not work out, and I revise in prototype? No, I would revise back to design. So I make changes, prototype it again. If it's in prototype and revise in prototype, then the policies have to be that it allows me to actually make changes, which you see the out-of-the-box policies are. Well, great, then I could send something out for prototyping and I keep modifying it on the same version. Well, that's confusing. Now, what version did we send out for prototype? Oh, yeah, that totally disagree with that. Moving on to the released. I mean, I've never seen that. You release and you go back to prototype. No, that terminology is very confusing. Design prototype, that's phase one. Release is release. We release the product. Now we have to do change notices. So we're really in the phase of production change, release change, something that is more of a critical, if you like, title or something that intrigues the engineer to know you're not prototyping anymore, you're in production change. So everything is on the table. The policies are okay here. I mean, yeah, okay. You can only revise and everything else was shut down. Re-download, you can revise. Obsolescence, revise back to design, or promote back to released. I don't know, maybe. But as far as the policies, makes sense. Everything has re-download. The one thing I don't like about it was the re-download is that, yeah, you might obsolete something, and then if you still keep the re-download, then you'll have the ability to take that object, put it in your workspace, and assemble it, and then check in the assembly successfully. I tend to warn customers about the ability of having to grant download for designers and engineers. Maybe a team leader, maybe somebody at that level. And the feedback I always get, well, we would like to see what that obsolescence object looked like. And I always tell them, well, I mean, why don't you open it in the Creo viewer and take a look at it, the published file, which you should be able to do with just the read permission. And they say, no, we want to open it in Creo. Well, technically, you can't do that until you actually have the download permission. So it's a common struggle I have, but it's really all I can do is warn the end users and the customers, like, hey, you might end up with a discrepancy where your end users will eventually assemble something that's obsolete. Because Windchill at that point, you're not making changes to the obsolescence file, right? But you're putting it in the workspace, and as far as Creo is concerned, it's reading it, no problem. So you can bring it in, assemble it, and check in the assembly. You haven't made any changes because you won't be able to because of the policies, but that doesn't mean you can't assemble it and update the assembly. The under review, again, the under review state is a state that's meant to complement the promotion request and the change management processes, where anytime an object going through a promotion request, meaning we're officially making a change of a state from one state to the next through a process, anytime we send a task for approvers to review the data so they can make a decision, vote whether they want to rework it, reject it, or approve it, these objects automatically are set to that state under review state. Okay? And luckily, they put that in the the issue is that they identified that somebody can revise the object if it's under review, but the policies, they block that in the policy, which is a good thing, trust me, because no user should go into an object that's under review, meaning it's going through a promotion request or a change management object, and revise it, because That will create a bunch of headache to the approvers. They're going to look at the object and say, okay, I'm reviewing not the latest. What's going on here? So that need to be addressed. Luckily, none of the out-of-the-box roles that come with this template have the permission to actually do that revision. But it is actually enabled in the lifecycle. All right. Product design context, yeah, about two-phase. Now we're going to get into the two-phase. This one, a little bit better, right? And remember, this one applies to only WT parts, not CAD and documents. And by the way, all these policies have been written at the lower level, at the product level. So they're not inherited from the org or the site. And now you can see that this makes more sense. Now we have something called the prototype in work, which makes sense now. If I send something to prototype and an issue comes back, I can kick it back to prototype in work so I can make changes to it. But in the design state, I mean, the same stuff we've seen earlier. But here's the prototype in work. What doesn't make sense is, why am I allowed to revise in the prototype in work? To get to the prototype in work, I should have already revised from prototype, which is there, which is fantastic. But why am I allowed to revise here? Well, to get here, it's a new revision from prototype anyway. Why do I need to create a new revision again? And again, the bad part is that the policies allow all these roles to do that. So you need to be aware of it. And prototype in work, there's a change management to go to released. I don't know if that, yeah, I disagree with that. I don't think that should be the case. There should be a change management from prototype to released, not from directly from prototype in work. That would be really confusing. We had a prototype didn't work, and now we're making changes to it. Oh, we're going to skip prototyping again. We're going to just release it. Well, that doesn't make any sense. Prototype, this makes sense, right? So now we can promote the release, or we go through an ECN and release it. And if there's an issue, we could revise it back to prototype. So I have really no objection to this layout here. This is, they nailed it on that one. Production change, that doesn't make sense. So to get to production change, you revise from release, same issue. Why am I having to revise again, or have the option to get to production change? The object was released, so it got back to production change. So now I need to work on it. Why am I granted revise again for all these roles? So again, that would create problems. And typically, like when you're in production change, you can and your ECN should automatically jump you to the release state. That is not desirable, because typically the objects, when they're in production change and as they're going to through approvals, they would be under review. So they did not really configure this correctly. This one, okay, I kind of agree with it. I typically shy away from using promotion requests when we're in the production phase. I rely on CM2 process and CM2 objects. Under review, again, same issue as before. No need to revise, but luckily they nailed the policies where it prevents them prevents users from doing that. But what is alarming here is that there is no transition, change management transition from under review back to released. Because when objects are going through an approval, they're going to be set at under review. Not out of the box, but that's something we highly recommend. Okay? Well, okay, they're under review. They're going to remain under review until the change notice is complete. All right? Well, if that happens, how the system is going to know how to release them? It's not going to know. And then you're going to get conflicts, and the ECN will not complete successfully. All right, moving on to, so we're done with these configurations and the different life cycles, and now we're going to jump onto the out-of-the-box processes. And keep in mind that these are enforced directly from the site, mainly is promotion requests. The promotion request, if you're not familiar with it or you never heard of it, it is probably one of the most versatile, well-proven, stable, highly customizable object in Windchill. And what it does, it allows you to formally request a review process on multiple objects of any type. So it could be a combination of documents, WT part, and CAD objects. Put them all into one promotion request, send them out so they can be potentially reviewed, and then there are loop, what do they call them, loops in there, where if the approvers decided they want to send it back to the creator for modification, so there's track of it. It automatically associates itself to in the history of that object, or all the objects that were included in the promotion request. So if somebody opens up a drawing, sees a major issue, and says, why is this released? So we could always go to the history of that particular drawing, look under the released version of it, and it will tell us this was released based on this promotion request, and we can open that promotion request and dig deeper and see what was that approval process like, and why was that issue or that discrepancy that we just found was not picked up as part of that review process. So the out of the box, the only thing that it offers is that when the approvers send the creator a task to rework, the only thing you get out of the box is if that user forgets to check in objects after modifying them and submit that task for yet another round of approvals, the system will automatically detect that status and will send that creator the same task again, and we'll let them know, hey, you have to check in this object. You cannot submit it for approval until you have checked them in. That's the only thing that's automated. But I mean, there's a lot of things in here that you need to worry about, and the biggest functionality that promotion request provides is it complements the state-based versioning, the ability to use multi-schemes of your versioning, numeric version, as we talked about in the two-phase life cycle and the one-phase life cycle. And that's not out of the box. So you have to, it's a combination of preferences, and you have to embed some stuff in here to make it work. So just be aware it has the capability of doing this. But it can take on a long list of things that throughout the years I put together. I call them check and balances. So anything that you struggle with as you're going through an approval process that your approver miss out on, from certain attribute values to potentially somebody adding an object but forgetting to set the object to be promoted, down to the option if an object is already part of a promotion request but's going through a rework and somebody else decided to create a redundant promotion request, we can have those checks and balances, pick that up and tell that creator, hey, by the way, this product, this particular drawing or that particular model or document are already part of an active promotion request. And the biggest one that we always get from customers, please implement something so the creator does not select himself or herself as the approver. And that's unfortunately not out of the box, but that's something we also can implement, or you should think about before you release it. The next topic is the change management objects. Out of the box, all these are functional. You can create all of these, no problem. If you're not familiar with the objects that represent the change management process, here they are: problem reports, change requests, change notices, and change notices will have a implementation plan, which is a list of change tasks. And then you could use variances and the subtypes, the you could do deviation or waivers. So that's all available out of the box. Again, these objects are parent objects, and they're coming from the site. Okay. The options is that out of the box, or sort of the flow of this change management process is you start with the problem report. You take that problem report or a combination of them and create a change request. And then you can take that change request or a combination of them, that's your choice, and proceed to create a change notice. Additionally, out of the box, you could skip problem reports. You could start with a change request and proceed to create a change notice. And with also not, this one is not out of the box. The out of the box is that you're mandated to create a change request before you create a change notice. But with a preference, you may skip change request and directly go to change notice. Change management configurations and preferences. So the change management change activity, and I'll go back up. Change activity meaning these little suitcases down here. Those are the bread and butter of the process. Those are the ones that will have the new revisions of the object you're trying to update. Those are the object that would identify the recipient or the end user that need to make the modification. They could also incorporate approvers, so that way those objects have a specific manager of some level to review the changes and approve them. So these are very, very important type of objects. Well, those mandates a review. And that's the out-of-the-box object, the parent object. And you can see here, the out-of-the-box setting is mandatory review. What does that mean? So sometimes you might say, well, it's updating a document. I'm sending it to the one marketing or one whatever, somebody at some department. They don't have anybody to check their work. So why would we have a review? But the out-of-the-box mandate that. The next thing is change notice cannot be created without a change, or cannot be created with a change without, I meant to say here, without a change request, which I emphasized earlier. So out of the box, you have to start with a change request, and then you can proceed to create a change notice. Some companies do not want to do that, or at least have the option to skip change. And that's a preference you have to set up. The last item is, when it comes to these processes, they rely on something called team templates, again, coming from the site out of the box. Be aware that the out of the box setup for these team templates, they include the administrators group. More specifically under the change admin 3, which we also refer to as the auditor, and for the change implementation board, CIB, when you're doing full instead of a partial. We call them fast track and full track. And what does that mean? That means when we get to the point where we have to audit, even though you have assigned somebody to audit, as an administrator, you're going to see those tasks appear in your homepage. So what you need to do is basically, if that annoys you as an administrator, what you have to do is make copies of these team templates at the organization level, edit them, and remove those administrators. Why this is set up like this out of the box is sort of a safety net. So when we do get to that point, if the system can't identify a recipient to the task for an auditor, at least it can resort automatically to administrator. And it's not going to leave that particular process running, without any attention. And that's the reason why it's it. The out-of-the-box change request workflow. It's got a lot of stuff in it. This is a change request. This is the mandated object that you need to start with so you could do an ECN out of the box. And the person that creates the change request is change admin 1, meaning any user that has been assigned under that role, which is present automatically, whether using the general product or the product design template. So change admin 1, 2, and 3 are included automatically into that team. So whoever is assigned under change admin 1, the minute change admin 1, the minute a problem report is created, that user would receive a task to evaluate that problem report. Then it becomes their responsibility to proceed and create the change request. And then they'll get a task to run what we call the impact analysis, go identify what objects or suggest what objects need to be changed based on this, and decide whether you're gonna go full track offline, fast track offline. There's a lot of option here. We assign it, review it, send it back for clarification, include multiple problem reports. You can see there's a lot of options in here that are included in that general workflow. Okay, and then typically, from my experience, customers always come back and it's like, no, we don't want this option and we don't want that option. We don't want people to start adding users left and right that they're not supposed to. Or the worst case scenario, this might allow you to add yourself as a approver or something along those lines. So it's typically we tend to change these. The out of the box change notice workflow. So now that we have a change request completed, change admin 2 would receive a task once change admin 1 completes that CR, and then part of that CR workflow, it would send a task to the assignee of change admin 2, and that person in turn will have to come in and create the change notice. The good thing is that task that is sent to change admin 2 cannot be completed by that recipient until the change notice have been created, and it has to reference that CR that the change admin 1 created. So that's very, very valuable function that's not embedded now in Windchill, which I'm all for. So that once I send somebody a task to proceed to create an ECN, they're not forgetful about completing the task without actually doing or initiating that CN. So now Windchill mandates that you do that before you can complete the task. The change notice is, again, you go in there and you develop what we call the implementation plan, and that would be those suitcases object we call change tasks. And there's only one template of these right now. And yeah, as I explained earlier, and I'll point it out in a minute. But yeah, once the plan is executed, the out-of-the-box functionality does not allow you to sequence the task. So you might have multiple tasks. Maybe you want to have 2-3 tasks to update CAD, and then you want to jump on to update documentation, for example. Well, it would make sense to complete the CAD first, then do the document afterward, because your document authors might want to reference the CAD to make sure they have the latest illustrated in their documents. So you can't do that out of the box, unfortunately, and that's something that a lot of customers find very valuable. Okay, the change tasks, those are the suitcases that we call implementation plan. Those are the object I was just talking about, where you should be able to sequence them, and each one of these objects would contain the new revision of the specific objects to be modified by a selective user. and potentially approved by a selective approver. The process is that, yeah, it's sent to that assignee, and then the assignee would submit it to a reviewer. The reviewer will send it back and for rework if necessary. And during that process, the system, unfortunately, out of the box, it doesn't do it. But that's something we highly recommend, that the objects that are being worked on and being reviewed should automatically transition states. So that way there's no confusion. When the reviewer gets them, they should be under review. When they're sent back for rework, they should say production under change, or whatever terminology you want to use. And then, and the reason you want to do that, because you don't want the reviewer to be looking at files where there are at the state that the assignee can or have the permission to continue updating them, because that doesn't make any sense. I mean, I could approve something and later on realize that what I approved on is actually was changed by the assignee. So we always want to make sure that whatever is reviewed is under review, where nobody can make changes. And if the reviewer approves it, it remains under review. So no more changes until we complete the ECN, or maybe we want to do another ECN and revise to address additional changes. Very critical, because this could create quite a bit of discrepancies on what was reviewed, what was approved, and what the actual object looked like when the ECN was complete. Yeah, that's like basic PLM. You definitely need to be implemented. That's about it. I hope I didn't bore you all, but I can take any questions you may have.
Thank you, Robert. That was fantastic. In interest of keeping this under an hour, which we really aim to do, I'm going to just follow up with one question for you right now. For those who found this very informative, but would like more practical hands-on training so that they can feel confident to do some of this work on their own, what training do you suggest they take? Both, public classes or PTC resources they can investigate?
I would suggest public classes. I have developed a class called Business Administration class that covers all this stuff, and again, more depths. What you learn from that class is the ability to take something out of the box, like I showed you, and dig deeper into how to create your own workflows, how to create your own life cycles, how to write policies, how to make changes to the promotion request, how to create subtypes, specific attributes, how to manipulate the interface, how to manipulate how to create the product templates, your own product templates and library templates. Yeah, I would say the business administration is probably, I mean, that was a huge turnaround for me when I started this venture 20 some years ago. I got certified, believe it or not, to be like a Windchill implementer, and it really, none of it made sense to me until I took that class.
Awesome. And actually, somebody just messaged me to remind me that we have that class already scheduled for April on our website at ETRAGE.com under the training tab. With that, let's wrap it up to the minute to keep it under an hour. Thanks again, Robert. Have a great day, everyone. Thank you for joining us.